Move, now. The captain's voice slices through the first-class cabin like a blade dipped in contempt. He doesn't lower his tone. He doesn't check the manifest again. He looks straight at her and sneers. "You don't belong up here," he adds, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This isn't a charity bus or a discount aisle. This is a commercial airline, not a social experiment." A ripple of gasps, a few nervous laughs. Phones tilt slightly upward. The woman in seat 2C doesn't flinch. Naomi Brooks, 42 years old, dark-skinned black woman, composed, quietly elegant. No designer logos, no entourage, a slim laptop bag at her feet. Her posture is relaxed but alert, the way someone sits when they've learned to survive rooms that never expected them to enter. She built her career in aviation systems and logistics, but nothing about her announces power. That is intentional. The man standing over her is Captain Richard Hale, 56, white, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, a 30-year veteran pilot who wears seniority like a crown. He has flown presidents, CEOs, and celebrities, and he believes that gives him the right to decide who looks appropriate for certain seats. He gestures toward her boarding pass with 2 fingers, as if it might stain him. "You people always try this," he says with a smirk. "Sneak into places you didn't earn. Sit where you don't belong. Let me guess, someone upgraded you by mistake?" A flight attendant stiffens. Another looks away. Naomi's eyes lift slowly, calm, steady. "This is my assigned seat," she says, her voice even. "According to airline policy, I'm within my passenger rights." That word, rights, annoys him. Captain Hale laughs, short and sharp. "Passenger rights?" He leans closer. "Listen, ma'am, I decide what's safe on my aircraft. And right now, what's safe is getting you out of this cabin before you cause a problem." A murmur spreads. Someone whispers, "Is this real?" Hale straightens and addresses the cabin like a performer who knows he has an audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says, dripping sarcasm, "we've got a situation. A misunderstanding. Nothing to worry about, just a passenger who thinks a seat makes her important." His eyes flick back to Naomi. "Stand up," he orders, "before I have security drag you out and embarrass you further." The insult lands, not because it's loud, but because it's designed to humiliate. Naomi stands, not in fear, not in submission. She rises with quiet dignity, smoothing her coat, lifting her bag. Her movement is unhurried, controlled, the opposite of what he expects. Hale scoffs. "See? Always playing the victim card. You should be grateful you're even on this flight." A senior flight attendant approaches, voice trembling. "Captain, may I speak with you privately?" "No," Hale snaps. "I want this handled now." He turns back to Naomi. "You'll be seated in the rear. There's an auxiliary jump chair near the restroom. Temporary, operational necessity." The phrase is cold, technical, weaponized. Naomi pauses. "Is there a documented safety issue requiring my relocation from the first-class cabin?" Hale's jaw tightens. "You don't ask questions here," he growls. "You follow instructions. That's airline policy." It isn't, but no one corrects him. As she walks down the aisle, whispers follow. Why her? Did she do something? Figures. The restroom door hisses open and shut. The smell of disinfectant hangs heavy. The jump chair is narrow, bolted to the wall like an afterthought. A crew member straps her in, avoiding eye contact. Naomi sits, a black woman reduced to a seat beside the toilet, out of necessity. The captain returns to the cockpit, satisfied. In his mind, order has been restored. The cabin returns to its artificial calm. Engines hum. The plane begins to taxi. Naomi closes her eyes, not in defeat, but in restraint. A single verse echoes in her memory, steadying her breath. Better one who is slow to anger than a mighty warrior, and one with self-control than one who takes a city. Proverbs 16:32. Outside, the runway lights blur into lines of white. Inside, something has already shifted. If you have ever been judged by how you look instead of who you are, If you've ever been humiliated in public while others stayed silent, then what happens next with this flight will make you hold your breath. Don't forget to like and subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices to follow what quiet power looks like when justice begins to move. Because the captain thinks this is over, but he has no idea who he just tried to put in her place. The cabin settles into a tense imitation of normalcy, the kind that pretends nothing has happened while everyone feels the aftershock. Overhead bins close. Seatbelt lights blink on. Naomi remains strapped into the narrow jump chair beside the restroom, her knees angled slightly inward to avoid the door as it opens and closes with soft hydraulic sighs. A young mother guides her child past, eyes apologetic. A businessman glances, then looks away too quickly. No one speaks. Up front, Captain Hale reclines in his seat, satisfied. He loosens his shoulders like a man who has just put something back where it belongs. To him, this was not cruelty. It was order. It was instinct. Years of authority distilled into a single decision. "Log it as preventive," he tells the first officer, voice casual. "Weight distribution adjustment. Non-compliant passenger relocated." The first officer hesitates. "Sir, maintenance didn't flag any—" Hale cuts him off with a sideways look. "Do you want to debate me at 35,000 feet? Or do you want to fly this plane?" Silence answers him. In the cabin, the senior flight attendant moves with mechanical efficiency, but her hands shake as she pours drinks. She has seen this before. Not exactly like this, but close enough. A passenger singled out. A rule bent. A justification invented after the fact. She pauses near the galley, watching Naomi from a distance. Naomi's face is calm, but her mind is working. She replays the captain's words, the phrasing, the emphasis. Operational necessity, airline policy, safety, words designed to sound final, words meant to close doors. She knows those words. She helped write systems built on them. A junior flight attendant approaches hesitantly. "Ma'am," she whispers, crouching slightly. Are you okay back here?" Naomi meets her eyes. "I'm fine," she says. "But I'd like to know which policy I violated." The attendant swallows. I don't think you did." "Then why am I here?" The attendant glances toward the cockpit. "Captain's orders." Naomi nods once. That answer tells her everything. As the plane lifts off, a subtle vibration ripples through the cabin. Naomi feels it through the thin padding of the jump chair. She places her hands on her lap, steady, measured. She has learned that composure unsettles people more than anger ever could. Up front, Hale addresses the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. We apologize for the slight delay. Safety is our top priority." A few passengers exchange looks. The words hang there, hollow. Midway through the announcement, a man in a tailored suit leans toward his seatmate. "You see that?" he mutters, nodding toward the rear. "They let anyone up front these days." His companion chuckles. "Probably tried to scam an upgrade." Naomi hears them. She hears everything. The senior attendant finally approaches Hale during cruise. "Captain," she says carefully, "some passengers are uncomfortable about the relocation." Hale doesn't look at her. "Passengers get uncomfortable about turbulence too. We don't ask their opinion." She cited passenger rights. The attendant presses. Hale laughs. "Passenger rights don't override command authority. And frankly, I don't need lectures from someone who pours coffee for a living." The insult lands between them like a slap. In the rear, Naomi watches the crew move around her as if she's invisible. Or worse, visible in the wrong way. She notes timestamps. She notes names on badges. She notes the lack of documentation. This is not anger she feels. It is clarity. She opens her laptop slightly, shielding the screen with her body. No frantic typing, just a secure login, muscle memory guiding her fingers. She closes it again, untouched. Not yet. The restroom door opens again, nearly brushing her shoulder. A man grimaces as he steps out, embarrassed for her, for himself, for the entire situation. He mouths, "Sorry?" Naomi gives a small nod. Grace costs her nothing. Hale checks the cabin camera feed briefly. He sees her sitting there, composed, silent. Something about it irritates him. He wanted defiance, tears, an argument he could win. Instead, he sees patience. "Some people," he mutters to the first officer, "just don't know their place." The words are quiet, but they are heavy. As the plane cuts through the clouds, Naomi closes her eyes for a moment. She thinks of every boardroom where she was underestimated, every meeting where her silence was mistaken for weakness, every system that relied on people like Hale never being questioned. She exhales slowly. This is not over. It has barely begun. A subtle chime sounds as the seatbelt sign clicks off. Passengers rise, stretch, reclaim normal gestures. Life continues around her, deliberately. Naomi studies the rhythm of it all, the way systems protect themselves by moving on. A compliance manual could never capture this moment, the social contract silently rewritten by fear and convenience. She notices the attendant who lingers longer than necessary, the one who avoids her eyes entirely, the one who glances back with something like shame. Patterns emerge. They always do. In the cockpit, Hale reviews weather ahead, confident, insulated. He believes the sky answers to him. He believes authority is weightless, immune to consequence. He believes wrongs evaporate once logged and labeled. Outside the window, the horizon looks endless. Inside, the cabin carries a bruise that has not yet surfaced. Naomi adjusts the strap across her shoulder, a small act of comfort. She counts breaths. She listens. Somewhere in the systems humming beneath the floorboards, truth waits for a signal. And when it comes, it will arrive, like pressure equalizing, inevitable and precise. If you've ever watched someone misuse power while others stayed silent, if you've ever been told to accept humiliation because that's just how things work, then stay with this story. Like, subscribe, and remain with Dignity Voices, because what happens next will change everything. Because somewhere between altitude and arrogance, a line has been crossed, and the entire cabin is about to feel it. The first scream comes from the restroom door. It's not loud, just sharp enough to cut through the white noise of the cabin. A passenger stumbles out, pale, hand pressed to his mouth. "The lock," he mutters to no one in particular. "It jammed." The flight attendant rushes over, forcing a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "We'll take care of that, sir." She glances instinctively at Naomi, at the woman seated inches from the restroom door, at the woman who should never have been there. The cabin notices now, not as a whisper, not as curiosity, as attention. Naomi shifts slightly, unstrapping and restrapping the belt as instructed. The motion is small, controlled, but the humiliation is no longer abstract. It has a smell, a sound, a rhythm of strangers passing too close. Up front, Captain Hale hears about the jam and rolls his eyes. "Figures," he mutters. "That section's always a problem." The first officer hesitates. "Sir, should we move the passenger back? The situation might escalate." Hale scoffs. "Escalate how? She's exactly where she needs to be." He taps the console, voice lowering. "Besides, we're already committed. If we reverse it now, it looks like we were wrong." That sentence, spoken casually, crosses a line. It's no longer arrogance, it's corporate negligence, dressed up as pride. In the cabin, a man with a Bluetooth earpiece stands and points openly. "This is ridiculous," he says, not to the crew, but to the air. "I paid for peace, not a spectacle. Why is she sitting there?" The word she drips with implication. Another passenger laughs nervously. Someone records. A senior flight attendant approaches Naomi again, voice rehearsed. "Ma'am, we appreciate your cooperation. This is a temporary measure." Naomi looks up. Her eyes are steady. "How temporary?" she asks. The attendant opens her mouth, closes it. Until landing. Naomi nods once. Then please note, she says calmly, that I am being held here against standard airline policy without documented safety cause and without informed consent. The attendant stiffens. Excuse me? I'd like that entered into the incident log, Naomi continues, verbatim. The attendant swallows hard. This is the moment the humiliation turns public. Hale storms out of the cockpit, red-faced, authority flaring. He stops in the aisle, making sure everyone sees him. Enough, he snaps. You don't get to make demands after causing disruption. Naomi doesn't raise her voice. I haven't caused anything. Hale leans in, lowering his tone so it still carries. You're sitting by a toilet because that's where you belong right now. You want to talk policy? Here's mine. Don't push your luck. Gasps ripple. Someone whispers, Did he really say that? A flight attendant tries to intervene. Captain, he waves her off. I'm not going to let some entitled nobody lecture my crew about rules she barely understands. That's the word, nobody. Naomi feels it land, not as pain, but as confirmation. She slowly reaches into her bag and pulls out her phone. Hale smirks. Go ahead, call your lawyer, or your husband, or whoever usually cleans up your messes. The slander is deliberate, calculated. Naomi unlocks the screen. I'm documenting, she says quietly, for legal accountability. The cabin goes still. Hale laughs again, louder now. Legal? You think this is court? This is my aircraft. He doesn't realize what he's done. Because in that moment, caught on video, logged in the system, overheard by witnesses, he has shifted the narrative from authority to liability. The first officer watches from the cockpit doorway, face pale. He knows what override logs look like. He knows what happens when command decisions collide with civil aviation law. This isn't about a seat anymore. It's about corporate negligence, about an airline culture that empowered one man to humiliate a passenger and silence a crew. Naomi lowers her phone. She does not argue. She does not cry. She does not beg. She sits. The restroom door opens again. A child steps out, wrinkling her nose. Her mother looks at Naomi with something like horror. Not judgment, recognition. This is wrong, the woman whispers. Naomi meets her eyes. I know. Minutes pass. Long, deliberate minutes. The humiliation stretches, heavy and visible. No one can pretend not to see it now. The jump seat, the comments, the captain's posture of dominance. And still, Naomi remains composed. Inside her chest, something steadies. A memory surfaces, one she learned long before boardrooms or aircraft cabins. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. She is not crushed. She is waiting. Because humiliation is only powerful when it goes unanswered. And this one has been documented, witnessed, and logged. When the captain finally retreats to the cockpit, his victory feels hollow. The cabin does not return to normal. The silence is different now, thicker, expectant. Naomi exhales slowly. This was the bottom, and every system that breaks does so after the pressure becomes undeniable. If you've ever watched injustice unfold while everyone hid behind rules, if you've ever been humiliated and told it was procedure, stay with Dignity Voices. Like and subscribe, because what happens next is where accountability finally arrives. Because the moment humiliation peaks, that's when quiet power decides it's time to move. The cabin grows quieter in a way that has nothing to do with engine hum or altitude. It is the quiet that comes when people realize something irreversible has happened, and no one knows how to rewind it. Naomi remains seated beside the restroom, hands folded, posture straight. She is still visible, still exposed, but the humiliation is shifted. It no longer belongs only to her. A flight attendant approaches with a paper cup of water. She sets it down gently, as if noise itself might break something fragile. If you need anything, she whispers, I'll be right here. Naomi nods, gratitude brief and sincere. She does not drink. She listens. Every system has a sound when it's under strain. In aircraft, it's a change in vibration, a subtle whine in the airflow. In people, it's hesitation. The attendants hesitate now. Passengers hesitate before speaking. Even the aisle feels narrower, as if the plane itself is aware. Up front, Captain Hale sits rigidly in his seat, staring at the instruments without seeing them. He tells himself he did what any captain would do. He tells himself authority must be asserted, early, decisively. He does not tell himself that he chose the easiest target. The first officer finally speaks. "Sir, we should document the restroom malfunction and the relocation more thoroughly." Hale doesn't look at him. "Already done." "With respect," the first officer says carefully, "the logs show no escalation that required passenger displacement." Hale turns then, slow and cold. "Are you questioning my judgment?" The first officer swallows. "I'm trying to protect the airline." That word lands differently. Airline. Not ego, not pride, not him. Hale turns back to the windshield. "Just fly the plane." In the cabin, Naomi closes her eyes for a moment, not to escape but to center herself. She thinks of silence not as absence, but as pressure. Silence is what forces truth upward when there is nowhere else to go. She has learned this in negotiations, in crisis rooms, in meetings where the loudest voice was always the least informed. A man, across the aisle, clears his throat. "This doesn't feel right," he says, not loudly but audibly. "She didn't do anything." No one contradicts him. A woman 2 rows up turns around. "Captain said it was safety." Naomi opens her eyes. She does not speak yet. She lets the sentence sit between them. Safety is a powerful word. It ends conversations. It justifies everything. It is also the word most abused by people who have never been challenged. The senior attendant returns, this time with a tablet in her hand. "Ma'am," she says softly, "I need to confirm your name for the incident report." Naomi gives it. The attendant types, then pauses. Her eyes flicker across the screen. Something there catches her attention, but she says nothing. Not yet. "Thank you," she says, voice different now, respectful, careful. Naomi watches the shift. It is subtle, but unmistakable. Recognition is beginning, not of identity, but of possibility. Time stretches. The plane cruises. The restroom door remains closed now, deliberately. A quiet courtesy. A small correction, offered too late to undo the harm, but enough to acknowledge it. Naomi feels the gaze of the cabin on her, not hostile anymore. Curious, uncertain. The question forming unspoken. Who stays this calm when they have nothing to lose? She thinks of a verse her grandmother used to recite when patience felt like weakness. "Be still before the Lord, and wait patiently for him." Psalm 37:7. The words settle in her chest, steady as a heartbeat. Up front, Hale senses the change without understanding it. Authority is slipping, not because someone challenged him, but because people are watching differently now. He hates that. He thrives on certainty, on compliance. Ambiguity makes him uneasy. A chime sounds. The senior attendant enters the cockpit. "Captain," she says, choosing her tone carefully, "I've completed the preliminary report." "And?" Hale asks. "And there are discrepancies," she replies. "If this becomes a formal review, we'll need clarification." Hale exhales sharply. "It won't." She meets his eyes, holds them. "I hope you're right." When she leaves, the first officer looks at Hale again. "Sir," he says quietly, "if this passenger files a complaint, it could escalate." Hale scoffs. People like her always complain. Nothing ever comes of it. That assumption is the last thing holding him upright. In the cabin, Naomi opens her laptop fully for the first time. The screen glows softly. She types a single line, then stops. She does not send it. Power, she knows, is not about speed. It is about timing. She glances at the window. Clouds pass beneath them, endless and indifferent. Perspective is a gift altitude gives freely. From up here, everything small reveals itself as temporary. A child across the aisle watches her openly now. "Why are you sitting there?" the girl asks. Her mother hushes, her mortified. Naomi smiles gently. "Because sometimes," she says, "people make mistakes." The child considers this. Are they going to fix it? Naomi's smile deepens, just slightly. Yes. The cabin exhales collectively, not because justice has arrived, but because hope has. The senior attendant returns one last time. She kneels slightly so she and Naomi are eye level. "If there's anything you'd like noted," she says, "now would be the time." Naomi meets her gaze, holds it. This is the silent look, the moment when anger is unnecessary, when truth is already loud enough. "Everything that needed to happen," Naomi says calmly, "has already happened." The attendant nods, understanding dawning. She stands and walks away, straighter than before. Naomi closes her laptop again, unsent message waiting like a held breath. The plane continues forward, unaware that its trajectory has already changed. Because silence, when chosen, is not weakness. It is the moment before consequence, and it is almost time. Naomi adjusts the strap of the jump chair once more, not because it is uncomfortable, but because ritual steadies the mind. She feels the eyes of the crew, the weight of unasked questions, the soft shift of allegiance that happens when people realize silence can be strength. Somewhere between rows and rolls, the story has inverted. She is no longer the one being measured. The system is, and like all systems built on unchecked authority, it is already revealing its fractures, hairline, and spreading, waiting only for pressure to finish the work. The cabin hums onward, unaware that decisions made in restraint often travel farther than those made in rage, and land with consequences no turbulence can shake loose. The first sign that something has shifted comes not from the cockpit, but from the ground. As the plane begins its descent, Naomi feels a subtle vibration beneath her feet. Different from turbulence, different from air pressure. This is procedural, intentional, a change in rhythm that only people familiar with aircraft operations would notice. She opens her eyes. Across the aisle, the senior flight attendant's tablet vibrates. She glances down, then freezes. Her thumb hovers above the screen, unsure whether she's allowed to read what's just appeared. She reads it anyway. Her breath catches. Naomi notices, not because she's watching the attendant, but because she's listening to the plane. When systems activate, they do so in layers. Notifications first, confirmations next, then silence, the kind that follows inevitability. The attendant approaches the cockpit again, posture no longer cautious, but careful in a different way. "Captain," she says, voice steady, "we've received an internal alert." Hale doesn't turn. "About what?" "About the passenger." That gets his attention. He swivels in his seat. "What passenger?" "The one you relocated." Hale exhales sharply. "I already told you. Handle it after landing." The attendant lifts the tablet slightly. "This came from corporate. Priority channel." Hale's jaw tightens. He snatches the tablet, scans the screen, then laughs, a short, dismissive sound. "This has to be a mistake," he says. "Run it again." The attendant doesn't move. It already was. In the cabin, Naomi senses the pause. The air has changed again. Conversations taper off. Passengers feel it, even if they don't know why. Something unseen has entered the space. A chime sounds. Not the seatbelt, not turbulence. A secure call indicator lights up on the cockpit console. Hale hesitates before answering. "This is Captain Hale." The voice on the other end is calm, controlled, professional. "Captain," it says, "this is the airline's internal compliance office. We need you to confirm the identity of passenger Naomi Brooks, seat assignment originally 2C. Hale glances back toward the cabin, irritation flaring. "Why?" "Because The voice continues, "Our system shows that Ms. Brooks is the founding CEO and majority stakeholder of Brooks Aeronautics Systems, the firm that manages this airline's routing algorithms, fuel optimization software, and compliance reporting infrastructure." The cockpit goes silent. The first officer slowly turns his head. Hale swallows. "That's not possible." "It's verified," the voice says. "And Captain, she activated a passenger dignity audit mid-flight." Hale's mouth opens. No sound comes out. In the cabin, Naomi feels the plane level slightly. The descent continues, but something else is happening now. Something administrative, invisible, unstoppable. The senior attendant returns to Naomi, this time standing fully upright. Her voice is formal now, respectful. "Ms. Brooks," she says, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, "corporate has requested confirmation of your identity." Naomi meets her eyes. "Confirmed." The attendant nods. She does not apologize yet. That will come later, when it matters. A murmur spreads. Phones come up openly now. Whispers sharpen into recognition. "CEO? Did she say stakeholder? That's her?" Naomi unclips her seatbelt and stands, not because she's been asked, but because the moment requires presence. She turns slightly so the cabin can see her. "I didn't board this flight to make a point," she says calmly. "I boarded it to get home." Her voice carries without effort. "But what happened today wasn't about me," she continues. "It was about a system that allowed personal bias to override airline policy, passenger rights, and basic human dignity. No anger, no accusation, just fact." Up front, Hale remains frozen, headset still on, corporate voice echoing in his ear. "Captain," the voice says, "you are relieved of command effective immediately upon landing. Your license status is under review pending investigation." Hale slams the headset down. "You can't do this mid-flight." The first officer speaks quietly. "Sir, they just did." In the cabin, the senior attendant gestures gently. "Ms. Brooks, would you like to return to your original seat?" Naomi looks at the jump chair, at the restroom door, at the faces watching her now with a mix of shame and awe. "No," she says. "I'll wait until we land." That choice lands harder than any confrontation. The plane touches down smoothly. Applause breaks out, not celebratory, but relieved, like a storm passing. At the gate, executives wait with practiced smiles and rehearsed apologies. Naomi walks past them without stopping. She turns once. "Accountability," she says softly. "Doesn't need an audience. If you've ever been underestimated because you stayed quiet, if you've ever watched power reveal itself only when it was forced to, stay with Dignity Voices. Like and subscribe, because justice has only just begun. Because now that the truth is out, the system must answer, and it won't be gentle." The jet bridge locks into place with a dull metallic thud. That sound, mundane, procedural, marks the end of Captain Hale's authority. Naomi steps onto the jet bridge last, not because she must, but because she chooses to. The executives waiting at the gate instinctively straighten when they see her. Two men in tailored suits, one woman clutching a tablet so tightly her knuckles have gone white. Their smiles are ready, rehearsed, useless. "Ms. Brooks," one of them begins, already extending a hand. "We'd like to apologize for—" Naomi walks past him. The gesture is not dramatic. It is surgical. "Save it," she says quietly, not breaking stride. "We'll speak when the records are complete." Behind her, the first officer exits the cockpit, eyes fixed straight ahead. He does not look at Captain Hale, who remains seated, grounded by instruction, stripped of command without ceremony. A federal aviation inspector is already approaching, credentials visible, expression neutral. "This way, Captain," the inspector says. Hale bristles. "I haven't been briefed." "You've been relieved," the inspector replies. "Briefings come later." That word, later, terrifies him more than anger ever could. In the terminal, Naomi enters a glass-walled conference room reserved for emergencies. The door closes softly behind her, No press, no cameras, just systems aligning. She opens her laptop. The interface is familiar, comforting in its precision. She does not need to improvise. She helped design this architecture years ago, after another incident, another misunderstanding buried under policy language and internal memos. She initiates the justice protocol, not a metaphor, a function. Across the airline's internal network, flags begin to rise, override logs. From the cockpit, populate the screen. Hale's decision history, patterns emerging where none were meant to be seen. Instances where operational necessity appeared disproportionately around passengers who shared certain characteristics. Race, gender, age, silence. Naomi scrolls, expression unchanged. In another window, crew compliance reports appear. Not just what happened, but what didn't. Moments when attendants hesitated, when documentation was incomplete, when silence replaced escalation. Complicity is rarely loud. It is procedural. She types one line. Trigger review. Command discretion abuse. Tier 1. Miles away, in a corporate office that prides itself on distance from the human consequences of its decisions, alerts begin to sound. The airline's general counsel freezes mid-sentence during a board call. "We've just received a Tier 1 activation," she says. "That shouldn't be possible without Naomi." The call goes quiet. Back at the airport, the executives finally take seats across from her. The earlier confidence is gone. They know enough to be afraid. "This was an isolated incident," one of them says, voice tight. "Captain Hale acted independently." Naomi doesn't look up from her screen. "Then you won't mind if the data confirms that." Another executive clears his throat. "We encourage discretion in handling these matters internally." Naomi stops typing. Now she looks up. "Discretion," she says calmly, "is how patterns survive." No one argues. The data finishes compiling. Naomi shares her screen to the room's display without asking permission. Charts appear, timelines, email threads. A directive from 6 months ago surfaces, language about maintaining cabin standards and minimizing passenger disruptions. Vague enough to deny, specific enough to empower abuse. Corporate negligence has a signature. It always does. "This directive," Naomi says, pointing to the screen, "created the conditions for what happened today. That makes this your responsibility." The woman with the tablet speaks, voice barely steady. "We were addressing customer experience metrics." Naomi nods. "At the cost of passenger rights." Silence again. But this one is different. This one is submission. She initiates the next sequence. License review. Captain Richard Hale, immediate suspension. In a nearby office, Hale is informed without preamble. His protest is loud, futile. The record speaks louder. Crew action review. Senior and junior attendants. Probation and mandatory reporting retraining. The attendants receive the notification simultaneously. One sits down, relief and shame colliding. Another stares at the screen, realizing too late that silence is also a choice. Executive accountability, policy oversight, failures, termination pending board vote. The executives across from Naomi receive the same alert on their devices. One of them exhales sharply, like a man punched without warning. "You can't do this unilaterally," he says. Naomi closes her laptop. "I can," she replies. "And I did. The board vote is procedural. The authority is already exercised." She stands. "This isn't revenge," she continues. "It's correction. Systems don't heal by pretending they aren't broken." Outside the glass walls, airport operations continue. Travelers walk by unaware that careers are ending quietly, lawfully, irrevocably. A compliance officer enters, nods once to Naomi. "We'll need a formal statement." "You'll have it," Naomi says, "along with the footage." The officer hesitates. "You could have handled this privately." Naomi considers that. "So it could happen again?" The officer nods, understanding. As she leaves the room, Naomi passes a monitor showing the airline's logo looping in polished animation. For years, that symbol stood for efficiency, reliability, trust. Symbols mean nothing without accountability. She steps into the terminal, phone vibrating once in her pocket. A message from the board. We support your actions. Proceed. Naomi doesn't reply. She walks toward the exit, pace unhurried. Justice, she knows, doesn't rush. It arrives when conditions are undeniable. Behind her, the system recalibrates, licenses flagged, policies rewritten, training modules reassigned, press statements drafted carefully to avoid naming what everyone now understands. This wasn't about one seat. It was about what happened when power went unchallenged, and what happens now that it has been. Naomi steps into the daylight outside the terminal. The noise of the airport fades slightly, replaced by open air and possibility. She breathes. For the first time since boarding, the weight lifts, not because she won, but because the system finally did what it was supposed to do. The fallout does not arrive with sirens or shouting. It arrives the way real consequences do, quietly, precisely, and all at once. By the time Naomi reaches the parking structure, the airline's internal network has already begun to fracture under the weight of truth. Automated compliance alerts ripple through departments that have grown comfortable ignoring them. Screens light up with red markers. Processes that once relied on discretion now demand documentation. Silence, once rewarded, is suddenly expensive. In a glass tower miles away, the board convenes an emergency session. No small talk, no pleasantries, just data projected onto a wall like an accusation that refuses to blink. Override logs, incident footage, passenger statements, patterns stretching backward in time, undeniable in their repetition. One board member rubs his temples. How did we miss this? Another answers without looking up. We didn't miss it. We minimized it. The general counsel clears her throat. We're exposed on multiple fronts: regulatory, civil, reputational. Someone says Naomi's name, not with resentment, with gravity. At the airport, Captain Hale sits alone in a small office reserved for pilots under review. The walls are bare, no windows. His uniform jacket hangs over the back of a chair like a relic from a life already ending. A compliance officer reads from a tablet, voice flat, procedural. Your license is suspended pending investigation. Your override authority is revoked. You are required to surrender all airline credentials. Hale scoffs weakly. This is overkill. The officer doesn't react. This is documentation. Hale opens his mouth to argue, then closes it. For the first time in decades, no one is listening to him. He signs where instructed. Each signature feels heavier than the last. Authority, he learns too late, is not permanent. It is conditional. In the terminal, flight attendants gather in a break room that smells faintly of coffee and stress. Phones buzz in unison. Notifications arrive with language that leaves no room for interpretation. Mandatory retraining, probationary review, performance audits. One attendant sinks into a chair, tears forming despite her effort to stay composed. I should have said something, she whispers. Another nods. We all should have. Across the city, executives pack boxes under the polite supervision of human resources. Their access cards no longer open doors. Their assistants avoid eye contact, unsure whether sympathy is allowed. Termination letters cite policy failures and leadership negligence. The words are clean, clinical, devastating. In a newsroom, producers debate how to frame the story. A black female CEO humiliated mid-flight. A captain grounded, executives dismissed. The temptation to sensationalize is strong, but the facts are stubborn. They resist exaggeration. This isn't a scandal, one producer says slowly. It's an autopsy. Naomi watches none of this. She sits in the back seat of a car, moving through traffic, city lights blurring past the window. Her phone vibrates occasionally, but she ignores it. Justice does not require her constant attention. She has set it in motion. Now it must complete its work. She thinks of another verse, one she learned early, when patience felt like surrender. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Galatians 6:7. The words are not triumphant. They are factual. By morning, the airline issues a statement. Carefully worded, apologetic without admitting guilt. It promises review, reform, recommitment. Analysts dissect every sentence, noting what is said and what is avoided. Share prices dip. Trust does more. Regulators announce independent audits. Civil rights organizations request meetings. Training protocols are suspended pending revision. The system, once rigid, bends under scrutiny it can no longer deflect. In a modest apartment, the young flight attendant from Naomi's row sits at her kitchen table, staring at her badge. She replays the moment she looked away. The moment she followed orders instead of conscience. Shame settles in, heavy but clarifying. She opens her laptop and enrolls in the retraining program voluntarily. It is the first decision she has made in days that feels like her own. At headquarters, a new interim leadership team gathers. They speak in cautious tones, aware that the old language has failed them. Someone suggests renaming a policy. Another suggests rewriting it entirely. A third suggests listening to passengers, to employees, to people who have been saying the same things for years. Outside, the public reacts not with outrage, but with recognition. Stories surface, similar incidents, familiar patterns. People share them quietly, as if confirming something they already knew but were never allowed to name. Naomi arrives home as dusk settles. She sets her bag down, removes her coat, and stands by the window for a long moment. The city hums below, indifferent yet alive. She feels no urge to celebrate, no desire to gloat. Victory has never interested her. What interests her is repair. Her phone finally rings. A board member's name flashes on the screen. She answers. "It's done," he says. "All of it." Naomi closes her eyes briefly. "Good. We'd like you to address the staff," he continues. "Reassure them." "I will," she says. "But not today." He hesitates. "May I ask why?" "Because consequences need space," Naomi replies. "Otherwise, they turn into theater." She ends the call and sets the phone down. In another city, Captain Hale watches the news alone. His name scrolls across the screen, stripped of honorifics. Just a man now. He reaches for the remote, then stops. For the first time, he cannot change the channel. He remembers her face, calm, unmoved. He had mistaken that for weakness. The realization settles like a weight he cannot lift. Back at the airline, new policies circulate. Language changes. Authority is redefined. Passenger rights are no longer footnotes. They are headers. The jump chair near the restroom is removed during a cabin refit, replaced with storage. A small change, a symbolic one. Naomi prepares a brief statement for internal distribution. It is not accusatory, it is not emotional, it is clear. She ends it with a line her grandmother once underlined in an old Bible, the page soft with age. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Micah 6:8. She sends it. The system absorbs it. And slowly, unmistakably, the collapse completes, not into chaos, but into something sturdier than before. 3 months later, the airport feels different. Not louder, not grander, just corrected. Naomi walks through the terminal without escort, without announcement. She wears a simple coat, hair pulled back, posture relaxed. To the people passing her, she is just another traveler moving with purpose. That anonymity is not accidental. It is earned. The airline's logo glows above the check-in counters. Same colors, same font, but something beneath it has changed. Subtle signage now lists passenger rights in clear language. New training posters line the walls. Words like respect, dignity, accountability appear where marketing slogans used to be. This is what reform looks like when it's real, quiet, structural, unapologetic. Naomi stops near a large window overlooking the runway. Planes taxi in orderly lines, guided by lights and systems that function best when no one notices them. She watches a crew perform routine checks. No rush, no tension. Procedure without fear. Her phone vibrates. A message from legal counsel, settlement agreement finalized. All parties have signed. She reads the attachment briefly, then closes it. The terms are comprehensive: compensation, policy reform mandates, independent oversight, long-term audits. No. Non-disclosure clause, silencing the truth. No language that allows the company to pretend this never happened. Justice, she insisted, must be remembered. Another message follows, this one from the board. Executive apology prepared. Public release scheduled for noon. Naomi exhales softly. She remembers the faces of those executives across the glass conference room, the certainty they once carried, the way it drained when accountability arrived without warning. Their apology will be public, yes, but more importantly, it will be permanent, attached to the record, to the brand. Reputation management, she knows, often focuses on appearance, on recovery of image rather than repair of harm. She rejected that approach immediately. Don't protect the logo, she had told him. Protect the people. The brand will follow. The airline learned that lesson the hard way. Naomi walks toward her gate. As she passes a familiar corridor, she slows, the restroom area, the jump chair. The is gone. Not replaced, removed entirely. In its place is a small, recessed panel with a simple plaque. No names, no grand dedication, just words etched cleanly into brushed steel. Dignity is not optional. Naomi doesn't touch it. She doesn't need to. The moment no longer belongs to pain. It belongs to transformation. A gate agent recognizes her, not from gossip, but from training videos. There is a flicker of surprise, then something steadier. "Good morning, Miss Brooks," the agent says. "Welcome back." Not welcome aboard. Welcome back. Naomi nods. Thank you. She boards with the general group. No special treatment. No performance. Her seat is the same one she had before. 2C. Clean. Ordinary. Right. She sits. The cabin fills. Conversations hum. Overhead bins close. Life continues as it should. A flight attendant approaches, younger than the others, eyes clear, voice confident. "If there's anything you need," she says, "please let me know." Naomi smiles faintly. "I'm good." The attendant hesitates, then adds quietly, "Thank you for what you did." Naomi considers her words carefully. "I didn't do it alone," she replies, "and it wasn't for me." The attendant nods, understanding something she will carry forward long after this flight. As the plane prepares for departure, the captain's voice comes over the intercom, calm, professional, measured. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. On behalf of the crew, thank you for flying with us. Your safety and your dignity are our highest priorities." Naomi closes her eyes, not because she is tired, because the sentence is true. She thinks of scripture, not as a weapon, not as a banner, but as a compass. The words surface gently, unforced. The fruit of righteousness will be peace. The effect of righteousness will be quietness and confidence forever. Isaiah 32:17. This is that quietness. This is that confidence. The plane lifts, smoothly, leaving the ground without drama. Naomi watches the runway fall away, the lines converging into something smaller, less heavy. Perspective returns. She does not think about Captain Hale, or the executives, or the headlines that burned briefly before fading. Their consequences are their own to carry. What remains is the system. Corrected, watched, accountable. Brand accountability is not about perfection, she knows. It is about response, about whether an institution chooses denial or repair when exposed to truth. This one chose repair because it was forced to, and because someone finally had the power and the restraint to demand it. Hours later, as the plane cruises steadily, Naomi opens her notebook. Not her laptop. just paper. She writes a single sentence, one she will never publish, but will return to when doubt tries to creep in. Justice does not shout. It lands softly, and it stays. She closes the notebook. Outside the window, clouds stretch endlessly, illuminated by sunlight that asks nothing of anyone. The plane continues forward. Stories like this aren't about revenge, they're about restoration. They remind us that quiet strength can outlast loud authority, that dignity doesn't need permission, and that accountability, when rooted in truth, can reshape entire systems. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever felt unseen, underestimated, or silenced, remember this lesson from God's Word. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. James 4:10. If you believe stories can heal, challenge, and restore dignity, like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're reminders of who we are meant to be. Until next time, walk quietly, stand firmly, and never doubt that truth when patient always finds its moment.